May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, our Creator, our strength, our rock, and our Redeemer. Amen. Good morning. Today's reading from the Gospel according to John is so rich. There's so much packed into it, I could write an entire dissertation on it. So you might all want to get comfortable. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Once upon a time, people were convinced that disabilities were caused by sin, usually the sin of the parents. Thank God we don't believe that anymore. But in 2010, a Virginia lawmaker claimed that disabled children were God's punishment for mothers who aborted their firstborn sons. He stated that the number of children who are born subsequent to a first abortion with handicaps has increased dramatically. Why? Because when you abort the firstborn of any, God takes vengeance on the subsequent children. My autistic son, Daniel, got to hear this. So did I. I miscarried my first child. Daniel knew this. Did you know the technical term for miscarriage is spontaneous abortion? Even though I know better, his words stung. Very recently, the United States Attorney General declared that violence in schools has increased dramatically since we allow children with disabilities to attend. But I know lots of sweet disabled children with gentle hearts who would never hurt a soul. And I know children labeled normal who bully, both physically and verbally. The truth is, children labeled disabled are far more likely than others to be bullied. These are extreme views, but even I fell victim to the kind of thinking that leads to self-blame. When the doctor told me my child was autistic, I immediately began thinking things like, was it that kidney infection I got when I was pregnant? Was I doing too much? Should I have rested more? Did I eat something I shouldn't have? Maybe I was getting the wrong kind of exercise, or too little, or too much. What did I do to cause this? I went frantically searching for some kind of reason, something that would explain to me why this happened. I even occasionally let myself fall into another trap. I would ask, what kind of God would do this to my precious little boy? The problem with that kind of thinking is that it totally ignores the complexity of life, of creation. But even worse, it feeds into the notion that some people are defective. That in some cases, God made a big mistake, or God is just plain mean. A few years ago, I went to a lecture at the University of Washington by the leading autism expert in the country. She talked about her research to date, and then she said she believes we're very close to a cure for autism. I admit, if somebody had told me that when Daniel was 7, I would have danced for joy. But sitting in that auditorium, I felt sick, like I'd been punched in the stomach. I didn't want my amazing, talented, compassionate, loving, lovable, beautiful son cured of anything. I love him exactly the way he is. You see, by that time, I'd spent nearly 20 years studying under one of the best spiritual teachers ever, my son Daniel. He taught me more about God than anybody else I know. I was blind, but God used Daniel to heal me, and now I see. I'm reading a book that Daniel gave me. He didn't just give it to me. He handed it to me and looked me in the eye and said, "You have to read this. It's urgent." The title of the book is Loud Hands. It's an anthology of essays written by autistic people about autism. I'm working my way through it, but it is so hard to read. In the very first essay, Don't Mourn for Us, Jim Sinclair bluntly points out what was wrong with my early thinking. He says, autism isn't a shell that a person is trapped inside. There's no normal child hidden behind the autism. It's pervasive. It covers every aspect of existence. When parents say, I wish my child did not have autism, what they're really saying is, I wish the autistic child did not exist and I had a different non-autistic child. This is what autistic people hear when you pray for a cure. The truth is, raising an autistic child, any disabled child, is hard work. I know this deeply. I lived it. I often wanted to just give up. Some days, I felt like a total failure. It felt like there were more steps backwards than forward. It wasn't fair at all. I didn't ask for this. Daniel didn't ask for this. But I look back now and I realize raising any child is hard work. It's just a different hard work. The problem is that label, disabled. It starts right off by saying, something is wrong with these children, I need to fix them. Is a labeled child really defective? That depends on your point of reference. We construct ideas about what a child should be, the ideal, normal child. Normal. Maybe you've all heard this before. Normal is just a setting on your washer and dryer. Anyway, we do the same thing with adults. We even build little subdivisions. What is the perfect mom or dad or friend or musician or artist or priest or teacher or doctor or any of us? I call these constructs dolls. We judge everybody, including ourselves, against these dolls we create. And everybody falls short. Some of us fall a lot further away from that doll than others. We label children and adults as defective, and then we set about trying to fix them, to make them exactly like those dolls, and we fail. We set about trying to fix ourselves, too, and we fail. The problem is, this turns people into the other, those who are out. Who is disabled? Some of the Pharisees near Jesus heard him talking and said to him, surely we are not blind, are we? We put so much time and energy into building these false idols, these dolls, but it never works because everybody has something. One of my favorite books is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. The protagonist is a 14-year-old girl who is sent off to a very dangerous place to save the universe from a terrifying evil. The angels, they're called witches in the book, who send her off, give her gifts to take with her. The oldest and wisest angel says, I give you the gift of your faults. What if our faults, our defects, the things we try so hard to get rid of or hide, what if they are actually our greatest gifts, our greatest strengths? What if the world desperately needs our faults? What if the disabilities that we mourn or disparage turn out to be amazing gifts given by God that the world, the universe, cannot do without? One of the theologians that I read in seminary suggested that the Genesis creation story is no longer useful in today's world. She had a lot of good reasons for saying this, but even so, I disagree. I think we need to look at the story through different eyes. In the beginning, at the end of each day, God looked at creation and declared, "It is good." God repeated this every day, "And it is good, and it is good." At the end of the sixth day, God saw everything that God had made and proclaimed that it is indeed very good. God said, all of creation is very good. God did not look around and say, "What a mess I've made of this. Go out and start fixing everything right now." God created humankind as God's reflection. In the divine image, God created them. I know Genesis wasn't on your assigned reading list for today, but I'm using it anyway. We are all created in God's image, every one of us. That includes all the people we label. We are all created to be God's idea of perfection. That includes all the people we label. If we could only know this deep in our hearts. Returning to our actual reading list for today, God says to Samuel, "The Lord does not see as mortals see. They look on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." I lead workshops on praying with icons, like that one over there. As I look deeply into an icon, into the eyes of God, I got a glimpse into their heart. If I sit with the icon long enough, I can begin to see myself reflected in their eyes, as they truly see me, not my broken image of myself. If I allow myself, I can see God looking back at me with extravagant love, loving all of me, every bit of me, not just the parts I think are okay, but all of me. Not in spite of my flaws, not in spite of my defects, not even because of them, but all of me exactly as I am. At first, often for a rather long stretch, for me this is shocking, frightening, and convicting. But then I am suddenly bathed in the overwhelming warmth of that love. It is almost more than I can bear. If I don't rush off too soon, I can turn around and start to look at the world through God's eyes, to see others as God sees them. And then maybe I can begin to look at my neighbor with that gift of extravagant love, loving all of them, every bit of them, not just the parts I think are okay, but all of them, not in spite of their flaws, not in spite of their defects, not even because of them, but all of them exactly as they are. The minute I can do that, I have a chance to become fully who I am called to be, that God's works might be revealed in me. The minute I do that, my autistic son has the chance to become fully who he is called to be, that God's works might be revealed in him. The minute we can all do this, we give everybody we meet the chance to be fully who they are called to be, that God's work might be revealed in them. It's almost more than I can bear. Today, when you greet each other in peace, take a little extra time and really look into the eyes of the person next to you. Try to see what God sees. Try to see that person as they are reflected in God's eyes. This week, look into the faces of the people you love and see them as God sees them. Practice on people you care about, on your friends, your family, your children, because your homework assignment is much harder. I'm going to ask you to go out into the world and look at your neighbors, particularly the ones you consider defective, through God's extravagantly loving eyes, and let God's love shine out into them through you. Once you were darkness, but now in the Lord you are light. Live as children of light, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true, and Christ will shine on you. Amen.